Hello and happy Monday. Welcome to another episode of The Space Between. I am Michelle Lane, and I'm really glad that you're here tuning in wherever you're tuning in from, whether it's YouTube or Facebook or anywhere on the podcast. Welcome. I wanted to talk today about the lens from which we see the world. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because it came up in conversation over the weekend with my husband. And I love when we can reflect back in areas of our lives and be able to see the growth, be able to see where we were, and who we are now, and kind of connect the dots back to the journey that it took to get here. And everybody has a different journey. And I think that's really important to establish, is that my journey doesn't have to be your journey. Yet somewhere in that desire to create this life by design, right? There comes this expression of self that you want to share with others because you've gone through some things. And as humans, we're all going to go through things. And by sharing our stories, we understand better that we're not alone. And I wanted to ask, who do you desire to be in this life? Because it was a question that came up that I'd never considered before. And so it seemed so simple and logical and like, yeah, who do you want to be? But as I grew up, I think I just got from point A to point B. I grew up with a mom who was sick and life didn't look the way I thought it was going to look. And even at a young age, I knew that. And so I wanted to do the right thing, or I wanted to stay and take care of my mom. And no regrets with that. But it's so interesting to watch and look back now on the places where I kept that pattern going. I stopped looking. I started looking for what everyone else needed, and I forgot to ask for myself. And so there's been a really beautiful unfolding of what those things are, and where do I dare to dream bigger, and what do I desire for myself? And maybe you've asked yourself these questions too. And maybe they haven't even shown up until some event in life happened, something beyond you, bigger than you, that you had to surrender to. And it awakened you to this new place of being where you just kind of let go of all the control. You let go of everything you thought you knew because you really had no answers anymore. And I think that's when we first begin to open up to this possibility of creating another life, or trusting in a higher power, trusting in something beyond us to energetically guide us to that next step. It's like we actually get out of our way enough to hear any whispers or messages that come next. And so the next question would be, what do you need to believe in order to have the life that you want? What is your believability factor through your current lens? If you have a bigger dream, do you believe you can have it? And what will it take for you to get there? And I don't mean there as this like, do all the things, do all the steps, find the how, get all the intelligence, still find yourself spinning, right? That never really works. There's this piece that is missing in trusting and believing in ourselves so deeply that we can allow ourselves the desires of our heart and the desires of our soul, the desire to become the person we want to be more of. And not from a place of being better or higher than someone else, just better in our own heart. To heal the places, the wounds that have come up over time, to see the patterns that we're running in pain and suffering that don't need to be there. And I remember the day that I learned that it was all a pattern of how I've been viewing the world, the lenses from which I was seeing the world. I had a beautiful mentor actually have in his talk that I witnessed for the first time ever seeing him on stage, was all the suits of armor and all the lenses that we protect ourselves with as we live life. And maybe something happened at 5 years old and we put another layer on. And then something again happened in our teen years and we put another layer on. And then we experienced a loss or a huge shift and we put another layer of protection on. And pretty soon, as we get to our adult life, we find ourselves so bound in these heavy suits of armor and so layered in all the lenses that we're not even seeing straight. We're not able to feel in our body what we want to feel to create the happiness and the love that we desire. And so the process of self mastery is coming back to you, coming back to yourself, diving into the emotional mastery of where you are now and where you want to be. And it's such a beautiful unfolding, and oftentimes can be uncomfortable in letting go of what we knew before to be able to develop and blossom into this new person. But what I really wanted to impress in this podcast today is understanding that you have a choice, that there is always something beyond wherever you are right now. And I believe we forget so easily because we get lost in life, in the circumstance, in the pain, in the loss. And we feel numb and we don't know what to do next. And we're not even sure what's next. But we get to a place where we know what we've been doing doesn't work anymore. And we're not absolutely sure we know what the next steps are. And that's usually a sign that you're in this growth pattern, that you're in a place where you may be more open and welcoming into next steps for you that could be completely different from anything you've known. And so maybe you dive into a little personal development and some books that inspire you, or you find somebody that has inspirational words, or you find a thought leader or somebody who's like, wow, that really shifted my perspective. And it's available to every single one of us. And so that lens that we're looking at, are we looking at our life through lens of worry and anxiety, a lens of fear or frustration, through an anger lens, through an attachment to outcome or needing to be right lens? These are all lenses I found myself in. And as humans, we have so many mirrors or lenses that we see our life through, and so many that open up an expanded awareness in how we can be perceiving ourselves and events and people in our lives that much more differently, to open up to more love, less fear, less worry, less stress. It's as though the stress creates cobwebs in our mind and we can't think clear. And oftentimes when we go through things, it's really difficult for us to dream again. And it's not everybody, but for many of us, we feel blank inside, or we don't know what's next. Everything we've done, if you've been a mom and your kids are growing and leaving the house, everything you've done has been for them, and you're finding yourself wondering who you are. If you built big businesses and you had all the success and the money and you thought that was going to solve everything, and you're finding yourself wondering who you are, that fulfillment piece still isn't there. Or you're working all the time thinking if you just work faster, you'll get ahead of it one day and it'll be everything you thought it was going to be. And you're exhausted and burned out. These are all beautiful experiences and learnings in life. And we get to choose if we want to continue on that path or we want to choose to try something completely new. And I guess this was important to me because we can find ourselves hearing we can be the people who create the life that we want, but we don't always believe that at our core. And I'm not always going to admit it either. But as we open ourselves up in that space of vulnerability and honesty and transparency with ourselves, we're so much better at finding the clarity within because we're willing to see ourselves with new lenses. We're able to see ourselves through that lens of love. I spent a really good portion of my life, over 40 years, beating myself up for not being perfect, for not being enough, for chasing whatever it was I thought I was chasing, thinking one day I'd be there, be pretty enough, smart enough, tall enough, whatever the enough story was. And in truth, it was this calling for me to come back into myself, to find that love, that trust, all the things I truly always wanted, but just didn't know how to do. And I'm so grateful for the journey of coaching, of learning life coaching, of being able to help others through that now. And I see it so much differently than I saw it before. I watch anxiety melt away from clients. I see possibility and potential in their eyes, the sparkle that lights up, and I can actually move forward towards the stream. I can see the shift in their body when they release what they've been holding on to for so long. It's so empowering to watch, and it's available to every single one of us. We don't get there by doing the same things over and over and over again. Those habitual cycles of thinking, those habitual cycles of behavior, the habits that aren't working for us, all the things, whether it's in our health, in our wealth, in our relationships, and yet we're expecting something to be different every single time. And oftentimes we're looking outside of ourselves for that thing to change. And yet over and over again, we're starting to see like this almost feels like a pattern that's running. Why does this keep happening to me? I don't know of anything different. It's always been this way. And those are beautiful signs that there may be another lens we can see things through. It's a beautiful opportunity to not judge ourselves, but just honor that space for a moment and give ourselves more grace to be able to say, oh, I could love that for this moment showing up because it allows me to see what I'm doing in a new way. How am I thinking? What are those thoughts saying? What am I feeling in my body? And in a world that teaches us not to feel and how to think, it's really good to get to know yourself on that level. And it's not always the easiest or most comfortable thing to do, but the freedom that's on the other side of that is so worth the reward. You stop having to wonder what it's like. You get to experience the embodiment of it. And for me, it began with just slowing down. So I'm curious if that's a place for you too. I mean, in this pandemic, this world has like shut down this last year. And maybe for some people, that wasn't really comfortable. Not having somewhere to go and all the things to do, you having to sit with yourself in a new way. You're having to look at your relationship in a new way. And from that space, you get to find things that you want more of. And you got really clear on what you maybe don't want as much of. But where's the focus? Are we focusing through that lens of possibility and potential and love and gratitude? Or are we allowing ourselves to fall back into a pattern of lack and worry and fear? Because the universe answers that call. No matter where we're thinking, it'll say, great, that's what you want. Here you go. And when I first realized that, my mind was blown with, wow, I've done it to myself in some of these areas of my life. This was my thinking pattern for so long. I was stuck in this illusion. Like the wishful thinking was rooted in how I didn't think life was going to be this way. I got stuck in the story of the unfairness. I got stuck in all of the things that my mom did to me. And I look back now and I'm so thankful and so grateful and have so much more peace because the anger has fallen away. The acceptance is here. And I choose to look at those things through more love. And it wasn't easy at first. Because the next questions that come up are like, what's wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with you. In fact, you matter so much. You have so much extraordinary in you. And through life, we forget or we get lost, or it just gets piled with more heavy armor and lenses that cloud our vision. And so my invitation to you is to dive into experiences that allow you to experience yourself differently. And maybe that's sitting still for a few minutes a day and just noticing that it's really hard to sit still for a few minutes a day. that's where it began for me. I would set a timer and not move for 2 minutes in front of my computer. And I would usually twitch or move something within 30 seconds. And it was really interesting to observe and become my biggest observer that way. And I think that's when it really began for me, that I learned I could observe myself without judging myself and just change the things that I really wanted to make a difference in my life. How I responded to things, how I reacted when it came to my kids or my spouse or my family. What was keeping me in this cycle of perpetuating misery versus freedom to just let them be them and know that I could choose differently within. I wonder if you've had those moments yourself. And so I dove in and I found the experiences with the people who resonated with me. And I worked with coaches and I got into programs and I discovered this whole world that I didn't know existed. And as those cobwebs began to clear away, I found more creativity. And I found where once it was so difficult to dream or set an intention or allow myself to think bigger, I began to open up this creativity channel and be able to just allow myself to, one step at a time, identify that I did have those dreams and I had just covered them up. And then as I allowed that, a little bit more happened, and a little bit more happened. And it's this layering of desire, this layering of what I want, through not being afraid to claim it, through not being afraid to showing up as me, because they coincided. It's like I also didn't know who I was anymore. If I didn't have all the things going and the businesses running and being the mom and taking everybody everywhere, like, who was I? And over time, I got to start to think about that a little bit more, feel into that a little bit more, make a list of what I wanted. Didn't all have to be true right now, but begin to allow myself to move towards those things and create an attitude and lens of possibility and potential. And as I did that more and more, my desires grew. Who I wanted to be grew. How I wanted to respond and reflect out into the world grew. And the gifts that came from that were deeper relationships at home with my family, a deeper relationship with myself, a deeper desire to help others do the same, guide them on their journey, not tell you the answers, but guide you into your own awarenesses. It's heart lifting, it's heart expanding. We're more than just this human body. We're a spirit in this human body, and we're connected to source. And by source, I mean God, universe, goddess, whoever that is for you. For me, it's God. And being deeply connected in this divine energy, knowing that I don't have to always have to figure things out. That I can make way for more possibility and potential through acceptance of where I am right now. And understanding that as the stress moves aside and that gets managed and the emotions are allowed to rise up and shift and transmute, that there's this beautiful cycle of divine timing that happens. There's literal stages through divine timing cycle that can be learned and understood and embodied, which takes all the pressure off of having to figure it all out. And from that place, you get a deeper understanding of who you are and what you want and where you want to go. And the self-mastery piece, the tools that are there, help bring you right back to that center when you've maybe fallen off center either side. And I want this for you. I want this for you so much. I give tastes of this at the retreats that I facilitate. I give tastes of this, obviously, in programs and on one-on-one experiences. And I invite you to reach out if you want to know more, if you're ready for that experience. if you're ready to experience yourself differently from a place of even loving yourself that much more, whatever that is for you with wherever you are, and feeling in your body the shifts that take place when you do make space for that. It's the space between where you are now and where you want to be. So let me know in the comments below if you've had those experiences before, if you've ever allowed yourself to dive into a personal growth program or an experience where it just took you away from everyday life and allowed you to just be in the moment and enjoy the bliss of not having to do anything, not having to be anywhere, and understanding that you had desires through that experience that you wanted to bring back with you into your everyday world. So I leave you with this. Where can you begin to clear the inner slate for yourself and stay more grounded in your everyday? To understand that when you're feeling frustrated or overwhelmed, you can just take a breath and check in with your body on what's overwhelming you or what's frustrating you, and be willing to listen to the honest reply that comes, and giving yourself that one next step to feeling better without bypassing it, to allow yourself to feel it and honor it, accept it for being there, and then move through to that next layer of what's next for you, that 0.01 thing in this moment that can make your day that much better, and then celebrating how that feels to be able to create more space for you to do the same over and over and over again. Let me know how this resonates with you. Let me know how it lands. Thank you for being with me. I'll talk to you again next week on The Space Between. I hope you have a fantastic week in between. Bye for now.